Other people's treatment of me does not determine my self-worth. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Have Breakfast. I'm your host, Jaden Eliz, and we have some to talk about today. So trigger warning in advance if you have any issue with authority or daddy issues, mommy issues, whatever it may be. As subtle and funny as the title may be, this is not a lighthearted conversation. I feel like there's not a whole lot of discourse when it comes to actually overcoming daddy issues as a woman. There's lots of jokes in media by men specifically who are always joking about fatherless daughters or making comments or blaming things on women having daddy issues or girls having daddy issues, when in reality, whose fault is it? Because I don't think it's the daughter's fault that she didn't have a father. It's not her fucking fault. As we're entering this month of love and thinking about all of these different relationships that we have in our lives, I think it's really important to take an examination on the foundation that built us. Everyone has a different background, so I can't speak to what your experience is. You can't speak to what my experience is. But I think by opening the door to have a conversation on what having daddy issues specifically can do to the psyche and do to your mental health and the overall impact it has on romantic relationships, the sooner you're able to start to dissect that issue and heal from it, that's the entry point of being able to really have a handle on romantic relationships and platonic relationships in your life. So I'm sure many of us have heard the term daddy issues before. Maybe someone was making fun of us. We just heard it in passing. We saw it on social media, whatever it may be. Here is what it means. The term daddy issues is often used informally to describe a person who has unresolved emotional or psychological issues stemming from their relationship with their father. The most common form of daddy issues comes in having a father that is not present in the home or is absent, or also comes from relationships that are abusive. The people who are looking after you while you're growing up, they're not always going to get it right. And it's so hard to reflect on that now being an adult and carrying the weight of that and understanding for the most part. And hopefully they did their best. Despite all the efforts that people who helped raise you put in or didn't put in, it doesn't mean that you came out unscathed. And these relationships early on form how we look at and approach romantic and platonic relationships as we continue to get older, because these are learned behaviors. These are examples that are set for us and it's trained in our brain. This is how the man who's supposed to love me growing up has always treated me. So this is what treatment from a man should look like. So for me, up until I met my fiance, I always struggled with romantic relationship. A big part of that played into the presence of my father growing up. I was taught from a very young age that inconsistency was expected. In short, a lot of it was messy. Okay, we're talking reality TV show. This is messy. I have two siblings that are the same age as me. Messy. There were so many moments where I was just so excited and so proud to have my dad invited or welcome him into my space, and just have such high expectations, because that's all you want as a kid. You want the person who you adore and you look up to echo that and show you that they feel the same way about you, or even more so because they're your parent. And it was just one of those things where I would continuously get my hopes up. I would expect for him to show up for me. Even as a kid, I had to be the bigger person. I had to be the person putting in more effort into the relationship. I had to be the one to call. I had to be the one to say, hey, I want to visit. Hey, I want you to visit, or make arrangements to figure out when I could go, because we lived in different states. And this was a behavior that taught me, okay, if I want to keep the attention of a man, I have to go above and beyond. I have to give a reason why this should be valid, or give a reason why you should want to show up for me. It has to be something grand, and I have to consistently remind you and tell you how important something is to me for you to even make a small connection that you should show up. And it was like, when he would show up, it was like getting that validation of like, okay, no, I am important. I am someone worthy of showing up for. This Like, it was just like the most exciting thing if he could show up and be on time. And it's so unfortunate that that was my experience, because then going into high school, as I started to date, that was the expectation I had. And so I saw that replicated as I began to date, because I mean, guys in high school, I'm far removed from high school. It's been a long time, but I can just distinctively remember that unless you have something to offer, there's not really an interest in you. Something to offer could be your looks, maybe you have a car, maybe you have social activities that are aligned with things that they do. There's just like some form of shared interest. And because I was constantly chasing validation from the time that I was like 3 years old, and that's the example that was set for me, I had trouble believing that I was valid enough for just being myself. I felt like I always needed to bring something more to the table, whether that was driving people around, my body, whatever it was like I was willing to do whatever it took to have someone by my side, to be excited to be in my presence, to want me, and just for just that sliver of attention or validation or whatever it was, it really shaped my understanding and helped me grow my self-worth. I don't think anyone should have to go through that to find their self-worth. But that's what it took for me. It took understanding that the only person in my life who can say I'm worthy of love is myself. Other people's treatment of me does not determine my self-worth. And in society, there's so much blame placed on women and girls for having daddy issues when they're not the ones who left. They're not the ones who placed this burden on themselves. I don't think anyone will want to have issues with their parents, issues with their guardians, issues with people that raised them. Having these experiences so young shape your worldview of how you anticipate men treating you or how you allow men to treat you. In my case, I was very forgiving of my father. I still am very forgiving. I feel like there's a lot of room for grace, whereas maybe there shouldn't be. It feels like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And having daddy issues can impact your overall approach to dating. So it can make you a little less trusting. It maybe allows room for men to treat you in ways that you don't want to be treated. You kind of like let them get a pass instead of holding them accountable for their actions. And you might be blocking your blessings. Like, you might come across a man who is so nice and you just like can't believe that someone would be that nice or be that into you or whatever it may be. And instead of allowing yourself to take the leap and begin developing something there, you're so scared because of your past trauma and issues that you've gone through that you don't allow yourself that opportunity, and you're blocking your blessings. And having these issues, a lot of times you end up repeating the pattern. So that's what we're here to do. We are here to break that pattern. We're here to release ourselves from the burden that was placed on us and allow ourselves to now get into healthy relationships and approach dating from a very different perspective. You also don't have to have trauma to have daddy issues. You can have maybe the best upbringing, an amazing relationship with your dad. And that doesn't mean that some of his generational trauma didn't get passed down to you as well. Same with any guardian or parent figure in your life. Anything that they have gone through in their previous life, even as much as they try not to, some of that is still going to get passed down to you. Some of those learned behaviors that happened to them when they were kids, that's going to get passed down to you as well. So it's really important that you're able to identify it and start to break that cycle. If you notice you're having relationships where you're feeling emotionally unavailable, feeling like you don't want to open up, or even feeling a sense of codependency where you can't do anything without them, or you feel like you're constantly seeking their approval, it might be time for you to take a look back at your childhood and unpack some of the ways that you were treated while you were growing up. Because what we lack a lot of times is what we want to give to others. I have found myself constantly giving other people validation or picking up on the vibe very quickly, so I'm able to show them, hey, I'm here, I'm paying attention to you, I understand, in giving that validation that I feel like I was really craving while I was growing up. So if you notice yourself doing a lot of the things that you wish other people were doing for you, it might be a sign you have some things you need to unpack as well. The type of guys that I was attracting, I think specifically because of some of these issues that I was dealing with that I maybe didn't know I was dealing with, I allowed myself to be taken advantage of to the point where it's like so crystal clear to me today. I would never be in that situation today where like you obviously have an upper hand. You won't text me back. You're clearly not interested in me, and I'm doing everything in my power to make you want me, make you want to talk to me, be interested in me, just like everything, where it's like, why am I yearning for a man? Like, sorry, it should be the other way around. And because of those learned behaviors, I just thought that was how relationships were supposed to work. I thought I was always going to be the one that had to chase, and I had to be the one to seek validation, when in reality, if you're in a healthy relationship, that's like baseline. Like that really, like when people are like the bars in hell, that literally is like, that's the bar, like that's the bare minimum. Being able to speak your feelings, get the validation, have intimate conversations about things going on in your life, and actually take interest in what the other person is saying. Like, it's not too much to ask for. Like, it really is not too much to ask for, and it's something that you deserve. So if you're not getting it right now, it's time to go, girl. Unfortunately, all of our past trauma is going to shape the way we approach relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic. I know it sure has for mine, and I'm sure it has for you as well. But this month, I really challenge you to dig deep into that self-love and understand that you are not your trauma. You are not what you've been through, and you overcame so much adversity, especially going through things like this, and in areas where you realize you were lacking or waiting for more from your parents or your guardians growing up. Be that person that you really needed when you were a little kid. Be that person for yourself. Be that person for the other people around you, and start to heal that childhood trauma, because that's what self-love is all about. It's about thinking of yourself, putting yourself first, and really diving deep into who you are and understanding that and accepting yourself for who you are. And once you do that, you can pick back up dating. But until then, make sure you understand how the things you've gone through are going to impact your relationships, and make sure you're able to identify some of those triggers, and also identify when you're not being treated right. Because if you're not and you're repeating patterns, it's time to go.